During a recent public appearance, a high-ranking press official made a statement that quickly ignited controversy. While attempting to convey the administration's stance on critical issues of public safety, the spokesperson appeared to fumble, a key phrase inadvertently suggesting that the administration's goal was to fight law and order. This misstatement, whether a genuine slip of the tongue or an ill-conceived turn of phrase, instantly became fodder for critics across the political spectrum. In today's rapid-fire news environment, such errors are amplified, dissected, and memeified before any clarification can begin to take root. The phrase "fight law and order" is not just politically charged, it's practically radioactive. For decades, politicians have used law and order as a rallying cry, positioning themselves as defenders of public safety and community stability. So when a public official appears to position an administration in direct opposition to that principle, it can create a perception of hostility toward foundational democratic values. The public backlash was swift. Online commentators, news outlets, and political opponents seized on the gaffe, framing it as evidence of misplaced priorities or a lack of clarity in the administration's policy objectives. But this story isn't just about one poorly chosen phrase. It's about the power of language in high-stakes political communication. When someone holds a role that includes being the voice of a major institution, every word carries weight. Even the slightest misstatement can have ripple effects far beyond the podium. In this case, the comment was immediately clipped and shared on social media platforms, accompanied by biting commentary and sarcastic headlines. Memes surfaced within minutes. Influencers, media personalities, and ordinary users alike latched onto the phrasing, using it to question not just the speaker's credibility, but also the broader competence of those in power. What makes such a moment particularly potent is the environment in which it occurs. Political discourse in the current era is often driven less by policy specifics and more by performative moments. A soundbite can overshadow a legislative victory. A slip-up can become a defining characteristic. This dynamic can be incredibly unforgiving. While some gaffes are quickly forgotten, others take on a life of their own, becoming symbols or shorthand for a perceived failure. The phrase "fight law and order" risks becoming one of those phrases, a marker of political tone deafness that opponents can wield repeatedly. Moreover, the gaffe tapped into an existing tension between rhetoric and reality. Public trust in institutions is fragile. When spokespeople contradict foundational principles, even unintentionally, it reinforces cynicism. Critics will argue that such moments reveal what is really believed behind closed doors. Supporters, meanwhile, are left scrambling to explain, contextualize, or dismiss the statement as a one-time error. In some cases, the defense is that the remark was taken out of context or misunderstood. But in the age of instant replay and viral video, nuance rarely wins. There's also the internal pressure that comes with high-level communications roles. These positions are not just about information, they are about optics, messaging, and control. The task of balancing clarity, conviction, and precision is constant, and the margin for error is razor-thin. This particular moment illustrates how a single line delivered poorly can eclipse an entire narrative or strategy. It's a reminder of how delicate political messaging can be and how important it is for those speaking on behalf of others to be exceptionally prepared and aware of the weight their words carry. Beyond the immediate media frenzy, there's a deeper question about accountability. Should such a misstep lead to serious consequences, or is it just part of the human element of communication? Some argue that grace should be extended for occasional errors, especially when they are clearly unintended. Others maintain that roles involving public messaging demand a higher standard, one that does not leave room for such lapses, no matter how minor they may appear in the moment. Ultimately, the incident underscores a broader truth about the nature of public discourse today. Perception is often more powerful than intent. Regardless of what was meant, the words spoken are what the public hears, sees, and remembers. And in a political climate where every sentence is a potential headline, that distinction can be the difference between stability and scandal. In the aftermath of a controversial exchange, a prominent Congresswoman stepped forward with a fiery and unapologetic response that commanded attention. Her words didn't simply serve as a rebuttal to political criticism, they became a declaration about the persistent challenges faced by Black women in positions of power. She articulated what many within marginalized communities have long felt, but often see go unspoken on such prominent stages: that double standards remain deeply entrenched in American politics and society. The core of her response centered not only on defending her own qualifications and experiences, but also on drawing attention to a broader systemic issue: how Black women are frequently held to impossible standards that their white counterparts are rarely subjected to. In a space where authority and visibility are often reserved for a select few, her assertiveness disrupted the usual narrative. She challenged the assumptions that often accompany race and gender, using her platform to question why intelligence, poise, and outspokenness in women of color are too often met with hostility or condescension. Rather than allow the moment to be defined by ridicule or distraction, she seized it as an opportunity to illuminate the disparities that Black professionals face in the public eye. Her tone was sharp, her posture confident, and her message clear. Competence does not require apology, and dignity does not ask for permission. In asserting her voice, she defied the attempts to marginalize her with humor or dismissal. She turned what might have been a moment of defensiveness into a striking example of how powerful representation can be when wielded with pride and courage. Her stance also reflected a deep awareness of how media and political ecosystems often frame outspoken Black women. There is a long history of reducing their arguments to anger or aggression, of casting them as emotional rather than intellectual. Her composure and clarity directly confronted that stereotype, presenting a portrait of someone who is deeply informed, politically savvy, and unafraid to challenge the structures that attempt to silence her. This wasn't just about defending herself. It was about standing for every person who has been told they're too much, too loud, too bold. The moment resonated far beyond the floor where it occurred. Social media platforms lit up with praise, especially from young Black women who saw themselves in her and felt vindicated by her confidence. They celebrated the authenticity of her message and the integrity of her defiance. In a landscape where performative allyship is common, her words felt real, earned, and urgent. She was not speaking for optics. She was speaking from experience. That experience is one shared by countless others who see their qualifications questioned and their character dissected simply because of who they are. Her remarks also underscored a fundamental tension in American politics: the difference between diversity as a talking point and inclusion as a practice. It's easy for institutions to claim progress by showcasing faces that reflect a wider range of backgrounds. It's much harder to cultivate environments where those individuals are respected, supported, and allowed to speak freely. She made it clear that being allowed in the room is not the same as being heard, and that equality demands more than tokenism. In addition, her response carried a warning: do not mistake professionalism for passivity or kindness for weakness. Those who expected her to back down or play along with political theater were sorely mistaken. Her ability to call out hypocrisy while maintaining her composure was a masterclass in political rhetoric and emotional intelligence. She reminded those watching that strength doesn't always look like shouting or confrontation. It can be measured in the precise articulation of uncomfortable truths and in the refusal to diminish oneself to fit someone else's narrative. This moment also forced a reckoning for some of her critics. It exposed the reflexive nature of their dismissals and the way certain voices are instinctively questioned while others are given the benefit of the doubt. Her refusal to shrink or soften, her language challenged them to look inward, to ask themselves why her confidence provoked such a reaction in the first place. And in doing so, she held up a mirror to a system that still struggles to accept powerful Black women who speak with conviction. Her words will likely continue to echo because they tapped into a frustration that has long been simmering. They were not just a defense, they were an assertion of identity, capability, and pride. Through her response, she invited others to re-examine their biases, their assumptions, and the ways in which they measure credibility and power. She demanded respect not as a gift, but as a right, earned through intellect, integrity, and unwavering. The broader discourse surrounding public accountability took a sharp turn when a former state attorney general delivered a pointed warning in response to controversial remarks made during a heated exchange. Her critique didn't arrive in the form of partisan rhetoric or empty sensationalism. It came with a deliberate tone, anchored in legal and professional experience. Her concern wasn't merely about optics or political fallout. It was about the consequences of irresponsible speech, especially when it involves high-profile individuals who wield influence over public opinion and national discourse. In her view, words spoken by public figures carry immense weight. They're not just expressions of personal belief. They help shape public narratives, reinforce social norms, and, in some cases, incite real-world reactions. She emphasized that when those in power speak, the public listens and acts. That reality becomes even more serious when those words come in the context of legal investigations, contested narratives, or widespread political tension. The wrong phrase, delivered with the wrong tone, at the wrong moment, can have consequences far beyond the speaker's intentions. She made it clear that there's a difference between free expression and reckless provocation. While every American has the right to speak freely, public servants and officials have an added responsibility to speak wisely. The challenge, she noted, isn't just about legal boundaries. It's about ethical responsibility. It's about ensuring that the language used in public discourse does not amplify divisions, deepen hostility, or provoke backlash, especially against vulnerable groups or individuals already under scrutiny. Her response was grounded in a legal perspective that often gets overlooked in political debates. As someone who has prosecuted cases, upheld state laws, and managed public expectations, she understands the delicate balance between justice and perception. She warned that mischaracterizing facts, making inflammatory accusations, or demonizing others, even under the guise of passion or political positioning, can undercut the integrity of democratic institutions. These aren't just slips of the tongue. They can be interpreted as calls to action by those inclined to violence, conspiracy, or rebellion. One of her central points was about timing. In moments when the nation is already polarized, when tensions are already high, and when political stakes are deeply personal for many Americans, the rhetoric of public officials can act like gasoline on an already burning fire. She wasn't advocating silence. She was advocating precision, thoughtful language, strategic communication. She argued that clarity and restraint are not signs of weakness. They are marks of maturity, professionalism, and leadership. Her remarks also held space for a deeper conversation about accountability, not just for individuals, but for institutions. She questioned whether current political systems are doing enough to enforce standards of conduct among those in positions of power. She asked whether it's acceptable to allow public figures to say things that would never be tolerated in a courtroom, a classroom, or a corporate boardroom. Her concern wasn't hypothetical. It was practical. In her experience, unchecked speech can lead to threats, intimidation, and a breakdown in civil discourse. Part of her warning also centered on the audience, the people watching, listening, and forming opinions based on what they see from their leaders. She noted that when public discourse becomes a performance of cruelty or vengeance, it sets an example. It tells people that mocking others, misrepresenting facts, and escalating conflict is not only acceptable, but effective. It rewards outrage and punishes nuance. And when that becomes the dominant mode of communication, democracy suffers. She offered her critique not from a place of superiority, but from a deep concern for the direction in which things appear to be heading. Her experience in the justice system taught her that process matters, that truth matters, that the rule of law depends not only on statutes and judges, but on the collective respect of the public. When that respect is eroded by careless or inflammatory speech, the legitimacy of legal outcomes is put at risk. People begin to question whether justice is possible, whether fairness is real, and whether those in power truly understand the gravity of their responsibilities. Her comments sparked reflection among those who understand the challenges of leadership. They reminded the public that being in the spotlight is not just a privilege, it is a burden that requires discipline and foresight. Every statement made in public carries the potential to inspire or to harm. And in times of deep national division, it becomes even more important for those with platforms to model the kind of discourse that encourages unity rather than chaos, thoughtfulness rather than spectacle. The exchange between the press secretary and the Congresswoman didn't exist in a vacuum. It quickly evolved from a political jab into a cultural flashpoint, sparking widespread commentary across news outlets, social media, and within political circles. At the heart of the matter wasn't just a disagreement between two individuals, it was a reflection of a nation's deep ideological divide, a symptom of how polarized and reactionary the public conversation has become. As soon as the footage circulated, reactions poured in. On one side, there were those who defended the press secretary, claiming the comment was either taken out of context or unfairly exaggerated by opponents. On the other side, critics lambasted the remark as emblematic of tone-deaf messaging and a lack of awareness about the socio-political climate. The Congresswoman's response was praised by many as a sharp and necessary pushback, especially given the disproportionate scrutiny women of color in politics often face. What might have once been considered a brief misstep turned into a battleground for larger debates on race, gender, power, and credibility. This moment also revealed how quickly a political incident can be transformed into a symbol. The press secretary's remark, regardless of intent, was used by commentators and political adversaries to question not only her judgment, but the professionalism of those she represents. Similarly, the Congresswoman's impassioned response was embraced by her supporters as a powerful stand against casual marginalization. Both figures became avatars in a broader ideological struggle that extended far beyond the original context. The rapid spread of clips and commentary across digital platforms was a defining feature of the incident. Within hours, edited videos, reaction threads, and memes flooded timelines. Social media, especially Twitter and TikTok, became arenas of both satire and serious discussion. Users dissected body language, voice inflection, and phrasing. Hashtags were born. Political influencers and pundits jumped into the fray, adding layers of interpretation and spin that either fueled outrage or offered defense. The issue was no longer about the substance of what had been said, it was about what the moment represented to different segments of the population. The controversy also reignited conversations about the double standards applied to public figures, particularly those who are women or people of color. For the Congresswoman, this wasn't just about clapping back. It was about reclaiming dignity in a space that too often strips it away. Her defenders noted how quickly assertiveness in women is labeled as aggression, while similar behavior in others is framed as strength or leadership. In contrast, critics of her tone accused her of politicizing the moment or engaging in performative outrage. The intensity of these conflicting narratives highlighted just how far apart public perspectives have drifted. Another layer to the story was the way traditional media covered it. Some outlets focused on the gaffe itself, dissecting the wording and speculating about its implications. Others centered their reporting on the Congresswoman's response, using her words as a lens through which to explore broader social justice themes. A few attempted balance, providing timelines and context, but even then, the editorial choices in framing told their own story. Media bias, intentional or not, shaped how audiences understood the incident and whom they chose to believe. The political establishment, for its part, offered a mix of silence, support, and condemnation. Party loyalists echoed the talking points that best aligned with their goals, while independent voices tried to steer the conversation back to more substantive concerns. Yet the damage, or momentum, depending on the perspective, was already in motion. The incident became a talking point in fundraising emails, cable news segments, and political podcasts. It served as fuel for upcoming campaigns and added new fire to ongoing debates about civility in politics. What this situation ultimately showed is how emotionally charged and reaction-driven the political landscape has become. The speed with which a single comment can spiral into a national controversy reflects not only the power of modern communication tools, but the fragility of public trust. People are hungry for authenticity, but quick to punish imperfection. They want strength from their leaders, but disagree about what that looks like. The entire affair became a mirror reflecting the values, fears, and biases of those watching. Some saw professionalism under attack, others saw justice being served. Still others tuned in not for meaning but for spectacle. It was a cultural moment disguised as a political one, and in that sense, it told us far more about ourselves than about the individuals involved. In the wake of the exchange and the rippling effects that followed, one thing becomes clear. Moments like these are not isolated. They are deeply connected to the political, cultural, and social currents running through the country. Whether viewed as a misstep, a moment of resistance, or a lesson in communication, the incident serves as a reminder of how fragile and powerful public dialogue has become. Every word spoken by a figure in the public eye is amplified through the lens of political allegiance, identity, and ideology. The line between intention and perception grows thinner, and the stakes grow higher. This event illuminated more than a single mistake or a lone rebuttal. It captured a dynamic that plays out repeatedly in American political life. The clashing of narratives, the weaponization of identity, and the constant struggle for legitimacy in the public square. When a press secretary speaks, she speaks not just for herself, but for the institutions behind her. When a congresswoman pushes back, she does so with the weight of lived experience and the expectations of those she represents. Both are held to standards that are often contradictory and unequally enforced. Public reactions, both supportive and critical, revealed just how entrenched the divisions are. What some saw as justified outrage, others dismissed as overreaction. What one group interpreted as incompetence, another defended as an honest mistake. And in the spaces between these polarized interpretations lies the real danger, a breakdown in shared understanding, a loss of empathy, and the erosion of common ground. Without a mutual commitment to good faith dialogue, even small incidents can spiral into cultural flashpoints that distract from deeper, more urgent issues. At the same time, this episode underscored the importance of representation and the ongoing fight for equitable treatment in politics. The Congresswoman's stance resonated because it spoke to a broader truth. Black women in leadership roles are still fighting to be heard, to be seen, and to be respected on equal footing. Her strength, in that moment, gave voice to many who have felt dismissed or belittled in their own lives. It reminded the public that power, when paired with authenticity and clarity, can challenge deeply rooted biases and change the narrative. Ultimately, moments like these are not about who won or who lost. They are about the values that guide political discourse, the standards to which leaders are held, and the consequences of how we engage with one another in the public sphere. If the goal of public service is to build trust, promote justice, and uphold democracy, then every interaction, no matter how small, carries the potential to either reinforce or undermine those goals. What we choose to amplify, how we respond, and whether we are willing to listen deeply will shape the health of our discourse